next is Dona Harrington-Burns, who's a Public Awareness Program Administrator for Colonial Pipelines out of Georgia. And she's going to talk more specifically about a program in Georgia that seems to be having some good successes. There it is. Up and down buttons.
Okay, great. Thanks. Well, this is the first for me because I have never been the last speaker at any conference. And I figured I'd be talking to about 4 people. So I'm really grateful that most of you, that I think is a big audience. I am here today, I work for Colonial Pipeline Company, but I'm here today representing the Georgia Emergency Response Initiative, what we call GPERI in our state. And it is a private-public partnership to improve pipeline safety in the state of Georgia. And what does that mean? Before I start talking about the program, I want to give you a little bit of a view of what kind of pipelines there are in Georgia, what are the issues. There's over 85,000 miles of pipeline in Georgia, and what you're looking at here are the interstate natural gas and the interstate hazardous liquid transmission lines. If you can kind of look in the map, the blue are the gas transmission lines, the red are the hazardous liquid lines, and we've got about 4,500 miles of the natural gas transmission lines and about 2,000 miles of interstate hazardous liquid lines. We also have a whole heck of a lot of distribution lines, about 78,850 miles, and they consist of both municipally owned gas distribution lines and also publicly owned gas distribution lines. Oh, I'm sorry. I need
let's set it here.
Sorry, everybody.
That's okay.
No problem. So why in the world did we even get involved in this? What were the drivers for change in Georgia? Well, we had a number of things that occurred. I don't know what it's like wherever you are, but we had a lot of folks squeezing off natural gas lines. These were emergency responders. In fact, they even created this special tool that they built so they could squeeze off these natural gas lines. But this proved to be dangerous, and we were trying to get people to stop doing that and to follow some other practices, and no matter what kind of outreach there was, we really weren't getting where we wanted to be. We were still having incidents. And then in 2008, the Georgia Public Service Commission came and they instituted a rule about countywide safety plans. And that was great, except the problem was that they hadn't been talking to any of the emergency responders. So we've got pipeline companies trying to talk to emergency responders. We've got local government making rules and not consulting emergency responders. In 2010, emergency responders said, and those are the folks associated with the Georgia Association of Fire Chiefs, they said, wait, enough's enough. This is not going well. And it was obviously like ships in the night. We both had positions. We just were not connecting. And then San Bruno happened in 2010. And of course, that raised put it on the radar screen a little more clearly for us that are we sure that our people know about where pipelines are in our state? Are we sure they have the ability to handle pipeline emergencies? So in 2012, we put together the first ever Georgia Pipeline Operators and Emergency Response meeting. And quite honestly, PHMSA sometimes can be a target for criticism. But in this case, PHMSA was very critical to this effort. And there were 2 people in particular that were really important, and that was Mike Chiata, who was a CATS coordinator in Georgia, and then after Mike came Artie Buff. And the reason they were so critical is this. Emergency responders knew PHMSA. They dealt with them all the time. Operators knew PHMSA. We dealt with them all the time. PHMSA was kind of the bridge. They said, hey, let's get all these chickens. We can put them into this room, and maybe we can get something done. And so that's what happened. And this was a statewide effort. We brought together emergency responders and emergency management and law enforcement from across the state, had a big meeting, went all day, and from that came a steering team, a smaller team that said, let's figure out a way that we can do this all better. I'm showing you here the steering team members, and I don't expect you to see this or read it, but what I want you to get from this is the fact that this was not a small effort. This was not 4 or 5 people sitting in a room someplace making decisions. We had representatives from paid fire departments, volunteer fire departments. We have a lot of forestry, Georgia Forestry Commission firefighters were involved. We made sure that we had represented all of the liquids lines, all of the natural gas lines, so all of the operators were involved, the municipal owners, the utility owners. And then we also had our regulators involved because We felt that it was important that we all got on the same page. We had PHMSA, Office of the State Fire Marshal, Georgia Public Service Commission, and the Georgia Public Emergency Management Agency. Now you're probably saying, oh my God, how did you get all these people to get together and do anything? Well, the truth of the matter is, this was so much easier than many of the things that I've done before. There were really no egos involved in this. And I don't want to tell you that every one of these people came to every meeting. There were some core people who came to every meeting, but these people were pulled in as needed. If we didn't see them for a while, we had an issue that we wanted them to get their approval on, we would ask them to come to the meeting. But it was an inclusive, cooperative, committed group of people. And I have never worked with people that were so, put egos aside to really just come up with what can we do and how can we make this effective for folks in the state of Georgia so we can improve public safety. We started from the very beginning. What we said was, okay, let's just figure out what's going wrong here. What's been wrong with our training so far with emergency responders? And we analyzed it kind of like it was kind of an outside-in approach, where pipeline operators really wanted emergency responders to get this information, but emergency responders didn't necessarily see it as their highest priority. And so it was kind of an outside-in push that was just kind of falling on deaf ears. And it didn't address the responders' reality, which was, hey, we already know some of this. We already get it in hazmat. We want to know about this, and you're never giving us a chance to ask those questions. I'm in a different position in terms of what I do. Maybe I don't need to know all of this information. And what was the best way for us to ensure real transfer? And it really was, what really came out of the whole thing is that the responders were not part of the solution. And by making them part of the solution, we were going to move this further along. So this is what we came up with. It's an inside-out approach to training. And what it says is that the Georgia pipeline operators are partnering with the Georgia Association of State Fire Chiefs to sponsor pipeline emergencies training. And the GAFC, or the Georgia Association of Fire Chiefs, administers the program. They're responsible for the program. We're also using the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, which is the qualifying agency for all emergency responders, law enforcement, fire, E911, emergency management in the state. So this is an all-encompassing training center. And we're using them to kind of be the center part of this, to create the training, deliver some of the training, and we're using a standard course, the same course that John is using, Pipeline Emergencies, to put the information, to give it some standardization, make sure that we're giving people the information that they need. So how does this work, and why does it work? Well, the Georgia pipeline operators provide the pipeline expertise. We're the people who know, we think we know what's important to you, we think we know what you need to know about pipelines, and then we have the Georgia Association of State Fire Chiefs, and they have the command and communication structure in the state of Georgia. They're the people who go out and tell their people, this is what we want you to do. That's been very powerful for us. And then finally, we have the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, which is, they've got the training expertise, and when you put this all together, and you're making sure that you're meeting all your compliance requirements, you have a great program. So what is our plan? Our goal is to train 624 Georgia fire departments, which is what we have in Georgia, over a 3-year period. And one of the things that we did is we looked at all of the information in the Georgia Pipeline Emergencies course, and we said, not everybody needs everything. And that came from the emergency responders. They said, let's break this up a little bit and do it by position, or title of your position, so that some people need this information, other people are going to go out and actually deal with an emergency, they need this level of information. So we came up with 3 different modules. Some of the training is delivered at what we fondly call the GPSTIC, our training center. Some of it is delivered, we qualify some emergency responders to be trainers and deliver that at their locations. And then GAFC also has some of their own trainers that they want to use to go out and talk to emergency responders at local fire departments so that we can do it in the evenings and we can do it on the weekends. We've also looked at this based on risk. We're going to do this over 3 years. We want to find the areas with greatest risk. So where are their pipelines located? Who has the most pipelines? We want those counties to be, we want to target those counties. We're looking at potential exposures, and Any place we know in the state where there is projected new pipeline or pipeline work of any kind of magnitude, we're saying, hey, these folks also need to know a little more about pipeline emergencies. Want to take advantage of some efficiencies. We have 8 GAFC regions, and that helps us to subdivide the training as well and optimize the marketing, scheduling, and attendance. And then we also do kind of a pre and post survey. We'd like to call it a test, but we try not to do that because that scares emergency responders. So we do a pre and post survey about what information you've learned so that we have some way of measuring, are we achieving our goals? Are we getting better information? I'm going to take a drink because I talk a lot. This whole thing started with a fine. In Georgia, one of our largest gas distributors ended up with being assessed a fine. They had an NOV. And so we had that fine money. And the Georgia Public Service Commission said, hey, we want you to get started working on this. We're going to use this fine money. We're going to give it to the Georgia Association of Fire Chiefs. And you try and put something together and make this happen. So we had some great seed money, about $100,000 to begin with. But going forward, pipeline operators are going to pay for this program. Now, I don't know whether most of you know or not, but pipeline operators pay for vendor companies to deliver training to emergency responders as part of our outreach program. At least that's pretty typical. And so we've been paying vendors all along. Well, why wouldn't we pay emergency responders? I would rather spend my money to pay those in the community where they live to do this training and have them be invested in it than I would pay a vendor. And so it's just like, it's not new money, it's just moving money. It's like saying, I'm going to give this to the local community. It's a 50-50 cost allocation between the interstates and the LDCs. And when I say 50-50, let me just say that our cost structure is a multi-tiered structure, but we've done it in a way that we would like all of the municipal companies to be involved, all the municipal gas distributors to be involved. They are, some of them just don't have big budgets. And so at the lowest level, for you to be involved in this, if you're a municipal gas company and you don't have much pipe, the cost is like $125 for you to be involved. So we've done our best to try and make it reasonable for everyone to be involved. And that has required, the larger operators bear a bigger burden, but we recognize that. We feel this is in the best interest of the state to do this. And why does it work? Because everybody wins. I mean, for responders, they're getting a much better information at a much more intimate level about pipelines, pipeline products, hazards and risks, and they own it. They're the ones responsible for delivering this training, and they own it. They have a lot more influence over the process. The right level of training to the right level. They have changed the way in which operators are delivering this training, but through their input. They have a new funding source. And let me tell you, this is not a small thing. As Chief Gibbs from Marietta will say, we are broke. We have no money. And so what we've said to them is, we were going to give this to vendors. We will now give it to you, and make sure you build into that a little bit of extra money that you can use in ways to improve your departments, across the state. And then finally, we're not just safety partners, we're business partners now. And we have a relationship that's has a contractual base here. We have a much improved liaison. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for the emergency responders that we work with. They are great people. We all recognize that we're all trying to do the same thing. The first time I gave this presentation, I gave it at an emergency response summit, and I followed some emergency responders, and they said, help us to help you. And I think that is at the core of what we really are trying to do here. We need to be able to work together so that we can accomplish our goals in the same way. And this is what this does. And of course, for operators, our credibility, how much credibility do you have when you're talking to a bunch of emergency responders and you're not one of them? You always have that gap. And so now we have much greater credibility because it is the Georgia training institution that's delivering this training. The effectiveness, these programs have, the Georgia Pipeline Training Center, they already have structures in place to collect data on, they know who the emergency responders are, they have pre-test, post-test. We have lots of opportunities here to collect better data. It's an inside-out marketing because the fire chiefs are the ones who own the program, and they have the lead on promoting attendance. I attended some sessions. First session was great. We were doing it in Cobb County, Georgia. First session was great. We had about 50 people there. Second session, 10 people showed up. I didn't get out of my chair. I wasn't the one looking for where everybody was. The fire chief got up, went out and beat the bushes and said, we have a training session here. It's important for people to attend. Next session, we had 35 people. So they have some skin in the game now for this being important and for what, and firefighters, they have lots of priorities. Difficult for them to say, yeah, I should do pipeline emergencies training when they have other training that's important to them. But this gives them some skin in the game, and it helps them to take responsibility for making this work. And then finally, again, we are partners in the truest sense in Georgia. We have active, and we had some unanticipated benefits that came out of this, and this was just so beautiful, and this is the whole point of talking to each other. When we looked at all this program, fire chiefs were sitting there, we're talking, and they're like, hey, you know what? We spend so much money and time having a fire truck sitting out of the scene, and they're waiting to deal with a gas problem. The gas is shut off, and they've got to wait for things to happen and get that all cleaned up, and I'm spending overtime on that. Why would I do that? Because some dummy doesn't call, and this is from a fire chief, some dummy doesn't call 811. They're like, we could stop that. Why can't we question people and see if they've got dig tickets? And so that's now a part of our program we teach, is to say, you as firefighters have the right, you as law enforcement have the right. If you don't see a company car there, you don't see flags, you don't see paint on the ground, you can roll up and ask them where their ticket is. Show me your ticket, that you've actually submitted a ticket to 811 and you've got a locate. And I've had fire chiefs tell me that they've done just that. We're also looking at, fire chiefs all kind of came up with this themselves. They're like, hey, we should be working on this with our planners and zoners. We should be making this, the fact prevention, a part of, if you're going to get a permit, then you should have to call 811. You should be able to have to prove that you submitted the ticket. And then finally, the whole idea here for us is prevent the incident you would otherwise have to respond to. And that does appeal to firefighters. As much as they like to get on the truck, they also like to work on prevention. It's part of their DNA. And so this is a very significant change in the way they look at things. But truly, I mean this honestly, it was not really prompted by the operators. It was prompted by the emergency responders. And that's the value of working together. Where are we now? We started teaching this revised pipeline emergency course. We started beta testing it in March of 2013 at the GPERI. And we have 50 responders that are qualified to the trainer level and 7 trainers working across the state. We're trying to get our emergency responder trainers, give them more background, better information. They've toured operator facilities, our tank farms, our control rooms, made field visits to where we're putting pipe in the ground, because we want them to have the background information such that they're not just standing up there and giving out course information. They've got something behind them that says, I saw it, I know what it's like. We've trained approximately 400 responders in 2014. It's not where we want to be. We want it to go faster, but I'm actually pretty pleased with it. I think it's a good start for us. The other thing that's happened is that, now that you have relationships with people, then all of a sudden, anything that happens in the industry, we'll get an email. Hey, could this happen here? Do we have these kind of products? And we go in this email chain around answering these questions. And it's not just us. It's not just the folks on the committee, because we're talking to these trainers. So they're gathering information about, after the Taiwan propane explosion, we got questions about that. Do we have propane in Georgia? How many miles of cast iron pipeline do we have in Georgia for gas distribution? It was It's been a very good thing, and it not only goes to the trainers, and those trainers bring that to the people they're teaching now, but they also carry that with them to the new people they're going to train in the future, that background information, that knowledge. And then another really exciting thing, I think, is that GPSTIC came back to the operators and said, hey, to go along with this classroom training, we'd like to have some pipeline props built. They have a 1,000-acre facility, and they said, it would be really good if we could do this classroom training, and then we could also kind of practice some things.